So in the previous video, so far that we have checked, we added a prospect, and why the prospect is needed is because we want to add a lease, which is the core function of the whole project. So what is a lease? Lease is basically, let's in the simplified process, let's try to think as there's a house that we want to give a rent to a user, and the user will pay rents on each month for each of the bills, each of the rents that will be charged to the user. So that's the end goal. So after that, for saying any, so there's a case can be said that, as I said, that this prospect will be open to public, so anyone can spam, anyone can add multiple prospects and etc. So will all the prospects be approved or not? For now, over in the code, if I show you over here, we have a prospects inside of the prospect model. I have is approved, which is by default is set to true, but once the system is up and running, we can set the default as false, and if we try to add a prospect as false, it won't be approved. So over in the prospects function, so after that, after everything is passed and etc., so we can have a, while adding a prospect, sorry, no, in this in the lease services over here, so in the add list over here, we can have this as if the prospect, as you can see, the prospect is approved or not. If the prospect is not approved, the prospect is not approved yet to assign to a new unit, the change the status to approved. So basically the prospect needs to be approved by any of the property managers. By then, if the prospect gets approved, then we can add, then we can convert the prospect to a lease. Okay, so now what I will do is basically I will just show you an example, and over here I have my example. Okay, just try simulating the whole process on again over again. So I have my property over here, I have my add property, and then basically which has the same similar thing going on. So I think we are good to go with it. So let's say we want to add a property for, we want to add a prospect for this unit. So I think the ID is 00E, 00E is this property ID, unit ID, the property ID this is this. Okay, so now we add a prospect, the prospect was added, and then we copy the ID, and then inside of the add list we have this. And after that, we want to add a prospect to this specific unit. Okay, okay, so if we want to add a prospect to this specific unit, so over here you can see that lease, what does lease histories mean, and there is an ID to it. What does it mean? I'll explain in a bit, but before that I'll show you an example of how to add a lease as an active lease or a future lease, and after that we can talk about past leases. We can also add past leases and etc. So yeah, so after that we will copy this ID, and unit ID is this, property ID is this, yeah, and then we will change the status. Basically, let's say we want to add a prospect from 2401 to 10 to 24 10 31, as the lease end must be the end of each of the months. Let's say we have rents going on over here, so let's say we add multiple rents. 350, let's give it 350. Say it's for gas, it's for electricity, and we can change the payment day. What does payment day mean? Payment day means for this recurring charges that we get each month, it will basically on each of the date it will charge the user for this specific rent. So let's say, let's change this to 5, and let's change this to 7 just for now. Okay, and we are good to go. Now we have a tenant. What does tenant mean? Tenant means that whoever we are renting this house, the user is basically called tenant, and and then the tenant can basically access the tenant portal using this email. So definitely we need to validate the email, as this we are where we are authorizing each of the user using emails. So can the email be distinct or not? So we also need to validate that. Just to check, we can say, if you guys remember, so we use company emails, so company1@gmail.com, which was the company one's email, right? And everything is good to go. Everything is good to go over here. So if I add the user, the role doesn't matter. It's just for over here. Even if I change any of to account, it doesn't matter. The role will be set as tenant, because it's hard coded to the service. So if I click on the, so it will take some time because it's creating a Cardnox payment user. So over here I'm adding the user, the ledgers, the tenant, and etc. Okay, I'm not sure why it got validated companies UMPN by company1@gmail.com. I don't think I used company1. Maybe I used C1, something like that. Not sure. Okay, so the email was C1. Sorry, my bad. So let's say the company email was C1, so it will definitely throw me an error. So okay, for the next list we will try this with any of the company's email or user's email or etc. So just for now, as we added a user and we don't want the user's email to be a company one, just for the sake of flow, we change this to tenant one. Okay, so okay, great. So now you can see it created multiple properties and etc. Why did it do that? So we have multiple rents, as we added two rents. Yeah, we added two rents on 5 and 7, 350 and 100 for gas, and for electricity 300, 350. User equals tenant one, sorry, something like that. And then property unit prospect, blah blah blah. Now you can see the rents over there. So what does ledgers mean? So ledgers mean that for this given time period, for each of the month we will basically charge the user. So if I refresh my DB, so over here, and also you can see a Cardnox. What does it mean? Because as we are using a Cardnox payment gateway to process our payments, so that's why we need a customer. So while creating a tenant, we will create a customer ID, something like that. And then we also set the tenant, the property reference, the tenant reference, property reference, unit, company reference, etc, etc, etc. So over here we have the ledgers itself, and then you can see for 24/1/10 to 24/10/31 we create ledgers. From over here we have the ledger itself, the amount that we added, and after that it created ledgers and etc. So you guys are thinking that okay, I added 23, why but it says 24? Just for the sake, I added a past lease that I said that I will explain in a moment. But before that, just to validate, the tenant lease ID won't match. The lease ID is 082. You can see over here the lease ID is 050. So if I go to the leases, you will see that there are two leases, 1 and 2, 050. You can see over here it's 050. That means that it was a past lease which is inactive and etc, and also is closed set to true and etc, blah blah blah. So that I will talk about in a moment. But these ledgers we were talking about over here, if we just check from first to last, is over here you can see 24017. From 7, that we have started, right? That 7 we have started. So 7 on 7 we added a date, and then after that we added a date on 2/7, and then for 3/7, and then we basically went on and on and on. Okay, so I think we started from 10 this, yeah. Okay, so my bad. So we didn't start from this, we started from over here, just to validate this 082, and it was basically 0 and this 082. The lease ID is 050, but here the lease ID is 082. So our lease starts from over here, but you can see that the amount is 1797. Why it's like that? But we added rent charges of 100, but it added 1797. It's because even if we say that the user will start from this date, but the user needs to pay the ledgers, the charges on this day of the month, but we are starting our lease from this date. So that means that from 7th, from day 5 to day 10, if the user haven't used the lease, right, so the user doesn't need to pay specific amount for that charge, right? So we are calculating it, and after that for these 5 days we are saying that, oh okay, the user doesn't need to pay around like 30.333, something like that. The user doesn't need to pay that. And for this is 350 and it starts from 7, so it's 248. But after that, from day 2, you can see the 5 can be started as we started our lease from 24/01/10, but we are on now February month and we are still inside of this range, so the user needs to pay the full amount as the user is inside of the lease right now, something like that. So this is basically it, and after we will go to the another collection, another page of the DB, and then basically from 24/07 24, our lease ends on 10/31. So 24/5 or 24/10/5 we added a lease, 24/10/7 we added a lease, we added a leisure. So basically the charges we are calling it as a leisure. Okay, so this is the explanation of adding a lease. But the lease can be added for past and a future. Okay, let's say that we want to add a lease to a past user, to a past time frame. So I already have added a lease previously, so I'll just show you an example just to simplify the process and saving some time. So over here you can see the lease started from 2023/01/1 to 2024/03/31, but our current date is 24/9/15. So that means this date is in the past, right? If the end date is in the past, we are setting the lease as inactive because there is no user living in it. It's just for the sake of records we are adding. Is close is true, rents we added, the ledgers we added, but the tenant is null. Why the tenant is null? Because there's no user currently living in the past, right? There's no user currently living in this time frame, so the tenant is null. But for the sake of records we are adding a lease in the past. But now I'll show you an example of the same type, yeah, the same type, but before that I need to add another prospect, as we want to add another lease. So each time for adding a lease we need to add a prospect. So I'll just go over here and change the prospect. Like let's say property and the unit remains the same. Now over here you can see the date starts from 24/1/10 to 24/10/31. Yeah, but can I start a lease between this time frame or in this time frame, or just from 2024/10/30 can we start a lease? No, we can't. It's because the lease is already occupied given this time period. So even if we try to add a lease in this time period, it won't work. So just for the sake of testing we will just try it out. So let's say that we want to add a lease on the current day. So let's say today is current day, or let's say we want to add a lease to a previous day. Today is 9/15, so on 9/14 we are adding a lease. We are starting all these, and the end date is 2025. Like let's say on March the lease will end. This remains same, blah blah, everything remains same. So if we hit the API, what should happen? We already have a lease in this time period, so definitely it has to, by logical thinking, it has to throw me an error saying something like that. So now if I see this, it says that selected dates overlap with an occupied lease. Please select another date range. So that means we are validating the cases where the dates might overlap. So we are already validating it. So let's say for the sake we make it 8 to we make it 9, and then we make it 24, we make it 11, 10, we make it 10. Okay, so now the start date in this period, but the lease end date is outside of the current date, right? So if I hit this, it definitely will throw me an error saying that selected dates overlap with an occupied lease, please select another date range. So we can't do that. So we need to select a date that is outside of this date. So 24, so we can't start a lease on any of the dates. So the lease ends on this, so we can start all this from this to, let's say, from 03, I guess. Okay, from and to, and obviously the lease end date cannot be less than cannot be smaller or lesser than start date. Even if we, for the sake of testing, if we try that, it will say lease start date must be before lease end date, the small cases that we need to handle. So, and then if we change the date, let's say we make it 12, well, yeah, and then for 1 month there will be a lease, something like that. And just for the sake, we don't change this, and we hit the DV, so definitely it will say the provided tenant email is already in use, so we can't use the similar email, so definitely it needs to be changed, this, and then tenant to, yeah, and then if I hit the DV, so it will say, and the request is already in process, and then after that it will create a lease which is in the future. So over here you can see the is closed is false, but the is future lease property is set to true. Yeah, why it's set to true? It's because the given this time period which is in the future, so the lease is future lease is set to true. That's the reason. And we have two rents. The ledgers we don't need to add, because once we in the next once we start this list we can add the ledgers, so there's no need for adding a ledgers, there's no need for adding extra complexities and etc. So that's that. So basically that's that. Now I want to show you another case where if I say that I want to start a lease from this day, let's say from 12/09 to 24, like make it 25, 02 28, I guess. Yeah, it's 28. So if I hit this, so what should have happened? In the first place, now we have three leases, one in the past, one in the present, and one in the future. Yeah, one in the future. But if we closely look at this date frame, date period, so this date period overlaps with this date period, because this date is between this date, but this date is outside of this date. So what should have happened in the first place? If I hit the API, so if I hit this API, it will throw me an error saying something like that, okay, there is an invalid request, maybe, okay, I need to add a prospect again because we are trying to add another lease. So I'll just copy another ID and then paste over here, and if I hit this, it will throw me another error. Now it will show me a different error saying that selected dates overlap with the future lease, please select another date range. So this is how we are defining our dates. I will show you the function, but before, just for the sake of testing, I'll add another lease. So now we have a lease starts from lease ends on 12/31, so we need to start a lease from 25, obviously. So make it 1, or maybe make it 10, something like that, or maybe 14. Okay, and ends on this date, and then blah blah, and then we can add on the lease, similar lease. It will throw me an error saying that provide tenant already exists. And if I change this, and if I hit the DB, it's processing, and after that it will create another prospect which is in the future. Now we have two prospects in the future, two leases in the future, one lease in the past, one lease in the present. That's basically that. Okay, so yeah, this is so this is it for this video.